Think about those things: the Bible, the printing press, the ballot box, and the steam engine. While Congress was busy passing the Tenure of Office Act, that's in March 1867, Secretary of State William Seward was agreeing to a major land purchase from Russia. In exchange for $7.2 million, the United States acquired the far northern territory of Alaska, or as the press mockingly referred to it, Johnson's Polar Bear Garden, or Seward's Icebox, and most commonly of all, Seward's Folly. See, the general impression seems to have been that the United States had been swindled. Why pay so much for an Arctic wasteland? Well, in truth, negotiations for the U.S. purchase of Alaska had been going on since the 1850s, when the Buchanan administration was approached by the Russians and talks got underway. Before anything like a final agreement could be hammered out, the Civil War had broken out, of course, and any thought of Alaska evaporated. Well, Lincoln appointee William Seward, this guy's an expansionist. See, back in 1848, he'd lobbied for the expansion of U.S. homesteading of Western lands by Hungarian refugees fleeing their abortive revolution back home. And over the next few years, Seward was a foremost supporter of a federally funded transcontinental railroad. He's arguing that the railroad would rapidly facilitate the peopling and cultivation of uncultivated land. Here I'll quote from Seward: "The power of the government is increased just in proportion as the population is extended over what now constitutes the public domain, and the wealth of the government increases in the same ratio as the increase of population." End quote. In 1853, he told an audience of Vermonters, "I have shown you that a continent is to be peopled, and even distant islands to be colonized by us." Of islands, Seward openly discussed the eventual expansion of U.S. jurisdiction into the Caribbean. Seward even proposed a homesteading scheme that would have used money from the sale of public lands to gradually emancipate America's slave population. A necessity, he argued, for the uplifting of the nation's morality. Speaking the language of manifest destiny, in other words, of a future that was obvious or plainly manifest, that's what that means, he noted, "I would not seize with haste and force the fruit, which, ripening in time, will fall of itself into our hands." More than anything else, the engine driving the United States' inevitable expansion was, according to Seward, the Union's virtuous Republican institutions. Those institutions, safeguards against wicked despotism or monarchy, worked in America as a force for good, for truth, for humanity, imbuing in the nation's territorial growth a divine purpose. "Let us save and impart to the world the elements of a new and happy renovation," he said. In 1858, Seward cheered the addition of Oregon into the Union. Seward's rhetoric was unsubtly tinged with the grandeur of empire. He explicitly referred to the expanding U.S. polity as the American Empire. This was especially evident in his advocacy of a federally funded transcontinental railroad. Such a project would increase the efficiency of governmental authority over a widely extended domain, he argued, and bind together the people of the Atlantic and of the Pacific. And here I'm quoting here and there from Seward. "It would bring Europe and China within 45 days of each other, and probably secure for the United States the trade with India, China, Australia, Japan, and other countries upon the Pacific, thereby making the old American cities of the Atlantic and the Gulf the entrepôts of the European, as San Francisco would be that of the Asiatic world. The railroad would facilitate the carrying abroad of the lights of American civilization." This is how he puts it: "the lights of American civilization to regions remote and hitherto involved in the darkness of pagan idolatry and imperial despotism, while creating a more perfect fusion of the different elements composing our own national union at home. In short, it would be a work whose benefits are thus to be universally felt and enjoyed. Okay, manifest destiny. Notice the grandeur of empire theme apparent in a later passage from the same Seward authored exhortation. Here, I'll quote from it. "Were it completed, the first car that should rumble over the stony mountains in its fiery course across the continent, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, would send a new sensation through the world. Britannia, Empress of the Sea, losing much of her pretension upon her great marine employed in the India trade, would feel that the foundations of that supremacy were about to crumble, while from the icy Cape to the far islands of the South Pacific and along the eastern shores and islands of Asia and Australasia, and throughout all the terra firma of the Pacific seas, would be awakened ideas of a new destiny and feelings of a new attraction, attracted to the great eastern stations of the continental road as steel to the magnet. A freight would roll down upon the states of the Union, such as the India companies never saw, embracing the furs of the North, the drugs and spices of the South, the teas, silks, and crepes of China, the cashmeres of Tibet, the diamonds of India and Borneo, the various products of the Japan Islands, Manchuria, Australasia, and Polynesia, while the Bible, the printing press, the ballot box, and the steam engine, think about those things, the Bible, the printing press, the ballot box, and the steam engine, would receive a welcome passage into vast and unregenerated fields where their magic powers and blessed influence are greatly needed." End quote. Now, Seward was eager to resume where Buchanan's Secretary of State, Lewis Cass, had left off and acquire Alaska from Russia. This meant convincing Congress that such a purchase made financial and political sense. One senator called the Alaska proposition reckless and wasteful, while the New York Tribune suggested it was valueless, an expense and trouble which the Tsar would gladly be rid of. That's how the paper put it. Unfortunately for our Treasury and our taxpayers, the paper complained, there is no diplomatic glory to be got out of accepting a gift. Well, fortunately for Seward, the scheme received the warm support of influential Massachusetts Senator Charles Sumner, at the time the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. Thanks in large part to Sumner's backing, the proposition was overwhelmingly approved in the Senate, though things were more contentious in the House, where the Alaska bill stalled for more than a year. Even before the purchase money had been formally appropriated, though, Alaska was officially transferred to U.S. jurisdiction at Sitka. Finally, in July 1868, just a few months after Johnson's impeachment, the House voted 113 to 43 to approve the appropriation of money for the purchase of Alaska. Well, despite the purchase's mixed reviews in the press, Seward exulted in the territorial growth of the United States. Just 2 months after his Folly, Seward wrote poetically to a friend. His friend is the mayor of Louisville. Here, I'll quote from his letter. It's poetic. Quote, "Our nation, with united interests blessed, not now content to pose, shall sway the rest. Abroad our empire shall no limits know, but like the sea in boundless circles flow." End quote. Well, Seward died in 1872, but his spirit may have felt some vindication when, in the 1890s, sizable gold deposits were discovered in Alaska, setting off one of several gold rushes or stampedes to the area. In fact, I'm standing in Seward, Alaska. Here's a town that today is a major fishing hub and tourist hub. There's a giant cruise ship right over there. Here on the Kenai Peninsula in southern Alaska, named after him, one of several places in America named after William Seward. Well, Seward's Folly continued to pan out. Once sought out for furs and now sought out for gold, Alaska was later sought out in a major way for fish and then especially for its oil. And let's not forget its strategic geographic importance in a World War II and especially Cold War context. Was the purchase of Alaska really Seward's great folly? You be the judge.